Hello, I am Christina, and I'm here with Martina, and we're your podcast hosts for everyday, ordinary, extraordinary women. We are deep divers and avid students of light and powerful facilitators for healing. In real life, I am an intuitive healer who blends massage with energy work to provide customized, holistic services for my clients.
And I'm a life coach specializing in parent and women empowerment, and I'm also a sound healer. And we both incorporate crystals, essential oils, angelic Reiki, and of course, intuitive guidance into our work.
We were inspired to create this podcast after pondering this question. What would a world look like where we can be inspired by every person? Usually, we're very quick to compare and judge ourselves and others. And when we do that, everybody's losing. Depending on my point of view, I can either feel small because I come out lacking, or arrogant and dismissive because I feel superior. Those are the only two options from that perspective, and neither of those options make us feel very good. So here's our thought. Someone's everyday normal is someone else's extraordinary. Judgment comes from our first impressions. So we invite you, the listener, to go beyond first impressions and see the magic everywhere. There's inspiration at every corner in everyone if we're willing to look. And today we're happy to welcome Michelle to the program. Michelle, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hello, and thank you for having me. So I am, it's always interesting to think about how to introduce yourself. I am a fourth or fifth generation Californian. I am a daughter, a wife, a sister, a stepmom, and in my professional realm, I should say a friend too, but in my professional realm, I've been a psychologist and in the healing therapeutic realm for about 25 years. And over the last, 5 or 6 years, I've been building a healing design company that integrates psychology, spirituality, design, and really the cultivation of beauty and resonance in people's homes. In my kind of joy space within my heart, I love to explore, whether it's a town or a country, and I love learning about spiritual traditions. I feel like there's actually a nexus of all spiritual traditions if you kind of bring it all to the top. So I'm very curious about every spiritual tradition. So that fills me up.
It's beautiful when you say, that's the question, who am I, right? It's always, every time when I'm asked that question, it's like, oh, okay. And I remember Brené Brown, and I mentioned this before here, it's like she has a friend who wrote a book on the dash, like mother dash, wife dash, this dash, other dash, right? Because we usually wear several hats. We're not just one, right? We're not just one.
Yeah.
So Michelle, I met you, I want to say 4 years ago.
I think 2 or 3, maybe 3.
4 years ago.
Yeah.
And
all blended during COVID.
Yeah, it's all like, yeah. And I remember having this kind of in this class, this meltdown, and you were just there and solid and holding space for me. And it was just so beautiful. And I so appreciated it, right? It was just like being confronted with my biggest shadow, right? I'm bad, I'm ugly, I'm dirty, and just being held through it and knowing that that's just one tiny little part and not the totality. So thank you for holding that space for me, and I so appreciate it. Now, if we really knew you, what would we know?
I feel deeply. I'm definitely a sensitive or an empath. I want to connect very deeply. I don't want to have surface level conversations. I want my life and my time on earth to matter and to make a difference in a small way or a big way to help others. In terms of knowing me, so I'll go to kind of the astrology, which has been helpful for me. I'm a Pisces sun, so that means I love the spiritual realms. I can be a little bit porous, so I'm always learning boundaries still into my late 40s. I'm a Gemini moon, which means I love to learn. I love to explore. I love to understand kind of the terrains of the psyche and the spirit and the body. And I'm a Capricorn rising. So I would say the mask I wear in the world is like having it together, or being there for others. And it's true. And then also times where we're a mess, right? And like, I think the last 4 years has humbled most of us, and it certainly has for me too.
Mhm. Yeah, I think we've all had a lot of humbling going on in the last few years, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm. And I love too that you spoke about astrology. A lot of people have been mentioning their astrology on here
Mhm.
lately. And I think it's really cool to just know those basics about what drives you and what runs the show. And I think
Mhm.
once you can know them, you can be a little more responsible for that side of yourself. And so I think
Mhm.
it's really cool.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mm.
Christina and I both are Aries. And I can
Uh-huh.
tell you through my whole chart, Aries is like so dominant. And it's really like being responsible, right? As Christina said, it's like, well, I am going with my head through the wall. I'll give you the heads up. And then
Absolutely.
afterwards, the cleaning up of the mess that I made, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Mhm. Yes,
Yeah. I'm
Aries with
self-made Aries
Leo
too.
rising. Yes, I'm a fire,
Ooh.
fire and fire, and yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Totally. Yeah. Fire is
So
good. And then also containment, right? The balance.
yeah, balance is definitely my challenge in life for sure. But
Yeah.
that's also my chart. It's like almost I can't remember. It's all fire. It's like two sign and then like I think it's either no water and one air or vice versa. So I know I'm very imbalanced and that's something I get to work on in this lifetime.
Mm.
So
Mm. Yeah.
for sure.
Mm.
All right, we're gonna throw our icebreaker question at you. Tell us a
Okay.
funny, silly or embarrassing story about yourself.
Sure. So I had to laugh when I was reading the questions because, funny doesn't come naturally to me, and um, humor has been something that I'm like trying to be with more. And I can be on kind of the serious side. So, um, but probably about a month ago, I was doing an online class and it was all about presence. So, like, can you drop in and be really present in any aspect of your life, like the good, the hard, the in between, the like you're exhausted, whatever it is. And so this was a Sunday, I believe. And I was, I felt really nourished and good in it and felt like, oh, yes, like this is something I do well. And then the next day, it was before Christmas, and I was going to the UPS office and I was carrying a really big box and I was carrying my phone, trying to like check the code thing on it. And I full on tripped over a car, like a whatever that's called, the concrete thing in the parking lot, and face plant. I mean, like so hard, my phone, like full, like everything. And honestly, I know I had angels because I broke my ankle 2 years ago. It could have been so much worse in so many ways, but I had this moment of just like, once I knew I was like generally okay, I was like, I was not present. And I like just worked on that yesterday, you know? So I think those are the moments where I laugh at myself, like, oh my goodness, I am like so in the learning always, you know?
Yeah. And honestly, I feel like most of mine are very similar stories to that. And it's always me not being present. It's
Yeah.
always. And I always have to laugh at myself. Like, first, it's like, look around. Did anyone see me just fall like that? And then it's like,
Oh my gosh.
ah.
Yeah.
And then it's like, thank you, angels, because I didn't just break my face. And then,
Yes. Yeah.
oh, here I
Totally.
am again, not being present, paying attention. So, yeah,
Yeah.
those little
Yeah.
wake me up. Yeah.
Yes. Like waking up for sure. And slow down, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
but it's funny that, like as you said, Christina, that we just look up and see, did somebody see that? I hope nobody saw it, right? Rather than, wow, okay, can I just tend to me, right? Like how we go away, rather
Mm.
stay with ourselves even in that moment, right?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and it definitely is a wake up call, right? It's just like, hello, you're not paying attention. Okay, I'm gonna make you pay attention. I'm like, okay, thank you.
Yep, for sure.
So, Michelle, what do you consider your superpower?
It was interesting to think about that question. I would say it feels like a blend. I feel like I've always been able to see the light in people, and I think with that is like empathy and compassion. So seeing someone in the midst of the mess and seeing their light, you know, and knowing that like the shadow is just the polarity, right? But I would say that's probably my superpower, and maybe grit, but yeah.
So good. I love the grit part, the like that tenacity to just get through and get it all done. Especially when
Mhm.
you're empathic, because you want to just help everybody. So kind of need that extra little boost
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, I had a supervisor who's also my mentor, and she said, you know, when people first meet you, they think you are like just so like loving and warm and soft, and then she's like, but if you get to know you, you actually have like a sword in the middle, like a, you know. And I was like, that I felt very seen, you know, because I think sometimes we're only seen in one part, and it helps to have people who see us in kind of all the facets, or many of them.
Yeah, good stuff.
And be willing to get to know you again
Mm-hmm.
and again and again, right? Because who you are today is not who you were
Mm-hmm.
even a month ago, right? Even
Yeah.
yesterday, for that matter, but a month ago,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna say, or half
Mm-hmm.
a year ago, and to be open. We were talking a little bit before we came on, right? We have this idea of who people are and what people are, and not considering that we're constantly changing and evolving, and granting them that courtesy of doing the same, you know?
Yeah. I just watched the Martha Stewart documentary, and so it's very inspiring. And but one of the biggest things I got was she learned to work in the garden very young. It was actually her father was almost like military and like forcing them to work in the garden. But because she had her father's perfectionist qualities, she loved trying to please him and loved working in the garden. But she said she really learned from the garden that like I can do anything, right? I could rip it all out, I could recreate, like change is and so she
Mm-hmm.
learned to embrace change at a young age, which also like let her be like go from being a model as a teenager to doing party. And like she just is always, but it's her garden that taught her that. And for me, it was just like, whoa. It was kind of
Mm-hmm.
one of those moments for me, like how cool and how cool to just learn to embrace change like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Good.
I need to watch that. I haven't seen it yet, but that sounds
I highly
inspiring.
recommend. So Michelle, what made you who you are today? So like what was your biggest lesson or what took the most
Mm-hmm.
courage or when did you take a stand for something that mattered?
Interesting. Um, yeah, and it's kind of following what Martina said, like we are not the same. You know, I'm not
Hmm.
the same person I was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 2 years ago. And I would say I was reflecting recently, I've had so many blessings in my life, and I've had immense grief that I've spent a lot of time working through. And so I would say like there's probably two pivotal events or experiences, they're not really events, that have shaped me to who I am today. And one was going through, I'd always wanted to be a mom. I think I have like pretty strong maternal energy. And we tried to get pregnant. I married later in my 30s, and I didn't get pregnant. And it was an immense grief. And it really like um, caused me to wrestle with my concept of God. You know, I grew up in the kind of traditional Christian church. And when I was going through that, I really felt like for me, I didn't receive what I needed to heal in that context. And that's specific to me, you know. But it caused, or it, I don't know if it caused me, but from that, I started studying a lot of different spiritual traditions. And really was like just seeking healing and solace and meaning and purpose from like, what the hell do you do with like, if one thing is the thing you think you're supposed to experience in this lifetime and you don't, what do you do? You know? So that's been an ongoing journey. And I was reflecting recently that it's been about 10 years since 2015. And it's put me on a very different path in terms of everything I've studied and And then I think the other thing is in 2020, my husband was laid off, and for that time and for some time, it really shifted our experience together, our dynamic, our certainly financial sense of stability. And we decided to move to Ohio from Northern California to live near dear friends, which was a really sweet experience to have. And it was also one of the most painful experiences, because I left living near my family, and they were quite upset about that. And it was the first time in my life that I think I disappointed them. So that was at 43. And so that was a massive grief that like lived in my body and my psyche for several years. And then I think concurrent to that was I became the main breadwinner for that season, and holding that while holding grief was very challenging, humbling. I felt like I got dismantled in most ways, and so I think because of that, I know how to be with people in grief, and I know that grief isn't just like one experience. Often it can be years, and it changes and it morphs, and you think you're done with it and you're not. And I think one of the lights in my life, one of the like aspects of like the cracks, in the pain is, or the light coming through, is I believe that what I'm meant to do long term is informed by everything I've been through. And so that gives me a lot of solace, like there's a purpose in this. And my desire for doing healing design comes out of my own lived experience of like being in massive pain and feeling it in my house, in my body, in my relationships, and being like, what can I do to help heal? I did all the things with my body, all the things with my psyche, most of the things with relationships, and then it was like, how can I heal my house? And so that really catalyzed my study of like healing the home, and it's from that I've created kind of a synthesis of psychology, spirituality, and healing design, and ceremony, because I think we don't have a lot of ceremony for loss. We have ceremony, we have funerals, but we don't have a lot of presencing and witnessing when someone goes through a massive transition, like the kiddos leaving the house, or the loss of a parent, or infertility. That's like a gradual loss, right? So I might have gone off topic, but like that's what's led me to today.
Yeah, so I can so relate to you, because when I met Martina in my early 30s, I was like, I'm gonna have 5 kids. I have 0 kids. That wasn't, and there was a point in my 40s where I really had to grieve that loss, right? And be like, I don't get it. Like, I knew I was here to be a mother, right? And can I mother all the children in my world? Can I take on that role? Can I really put that mother energy out into the world and still, but I also realized like if I had 5 kids, I wouldn't be able to do the work on this planet to do. And so I really had to own my purpose and to see my path in motherhood was just different. And once I got to that place, then it was easy to be at peace with what my journey is in this lifetime.
Yeah. And even that recognition, because I felt similarly, or I have felt similarly, that I think sometimes those of us who are very sensitive, I think there are many mothers like Martina who have many children who are also very sensitive and able to hold the space for all, and also ground and hear what you need to hear to do your work in the world, right? And it's also probably different seasons. But I realized, I wonder, as much as it's been painful, I wonder if it's also been a gift for me, because I think I could have lost myself in motherhood and
Exactly.
not all the things I feel that I'm meant to do.
Yeah. That's how I see it too. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I can tell you from the other side, right? And we spoke about this before with Christina. It's like my children are my extension, right?
Mm,
So the work I've done, and yes, I've done tons of work while they were little, but they're my extension, right? They are, if I may say so, quite extraordinary.
Mhm.
And you know, for me, I feel I needed to have them. Like it's almost like now looking back, it's all the growth I've done through them, right? With them, through them. It was when my son was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy, that was my kick in the butt to start doing my work, right? And talking of grief, like that's a constant, like it's a constant letting go. It's a constant. And I remember the first time I was like, well, he might never move out, right? So in our minds, it's that image of, oh, wow, the children are going to grow up, they're going to move out, and I'm going to be able to do what I want to do, right? And it's like, okay, so who do I need to be? Like, what do I need to be happy in spite of everything, right? In spite of having 4 children, in spite of, so it's just a different kind of growing that comes, and our children are here to press our buttons, to stomp on our hearts, to kick, to kick our hearts, to, and it's just a different, like we're all working on the same ultimately, I believe. It's just a different way of going about it, right? For me, I, you know, yeah, my son's diagnosis was like, now, it's the time. There's no time to, and who I had to become because of it, right?
Yeah.
And for you, it was the grieving, the letting go of that dream. And we all have those little or bigger grievings in our life, right? Whatever it looks like and however it is. Right? It's leaving your parents' house, like going from middle school to high school. Like we all have those. It's like, but we've never learned to deal with them really, right? Like as you said, like there's rituals, there's celebrations for marriage, for
Yeah.
even coming of age for girls, but there's not, like, the saying goodbye is never part of that equation.
Yeah. Yeah. That has been, I think, because I went through it and have gone through it so deeply. I've also seen, so I'm a psychologist, I've had a practice the whole time, and sitting with so many different clients and hearing and seeing like how stuck they are in their home, and that often they aren't aware of the impact of their home space, the clutter, the like energetic debris, on their psyche and on their spirit and on their body, and so I think my heart with moving into this healing design work is really to be like, let's create ritual and ceremony to honor whatever loss or transition, right? Because it's not always loss, but often there's like an aspect, right? But to like really concretize, like, this is happening now, like how do you be present to it, and how do you honor what has been, and also what you want to create going forward, but yeah, I think our culture is not as good at that, than many other cultures have a lot more, both language and ceremony to navigate.
Well, we're in the system of, okay, what's next? Okay,
Yes.
we need to produce results. Come on, let's produce results, right? So there is no time there's no time. Okay, let's celebrate for a minute and then we're just gonna move on, right?
Totally.
Even
There's
that.
also no time for how do you feel? Like, what are your emotions? What do you like?
Yeah, because we stopped making that a priority, right?
Yeah.
Priority is on the outside, not on the inside.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's beautiful because I know this, we're in the process of getting rid, like seriously getting rid of stuff, right? And it's like it's shedding old identities as well, right?
Yes, totally.
I'm not that person anymore that was wearing that I don't know how many years ago. Can I let it go, right?
Yeah, totally.
or that
And
bought that book or whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And the sweet thing that I've experienced in my own life, and I feel, future clients will experience, is like there's such a freedom and a lightness that comes with the letting go of, especially like of all the stuff, but also like putting words to what you need to let go of, right? And doing, whether it's ritual or ceremony or like just being witnessed, right? Like having a circle around you. Like I think about when we were together in ceremony and retreat, like having you and Danielle and Colleen and the other women, like it was really powerful, right? And there are a lot of places we do that in our culture, right?
So with all of that work and deep dive and shedding, what do you do to fill yourself up?
So I love to explore. So I think I mentioned this earlier, but like I love to explore a new, like I'm now living in the Sierras. So there's all these new little towns and like going to the lake and going to the river, like places I've never been, like that really fills me up. Being in like sacred community is really powerful. So recently I went to a retreat in kind of near Joshua Tree, and just being with people who are of a similar heart, that's really nourishing, because I think many of the things that I love might sound totally bizarre to many people I grew up with. So being around people who are like, oh no, I get that. That's really nourishing. And then like the cultivation of beauty. So I love creating beauty in my home. I love helping other people cultivate beauty. I find a bizarre appreciation and enjoyment of like helping people clear stuff. So like get rid of the things that don't bring you joy or aren't functional, right? And think about like who could you give it to? Like I don't need, if there's stuff that I'm not using, I want someone else to use it. So that gives me like, I would say, a bizarre joy. um, and it's funny, I'm a Aries South Node and a Libra North Node. So one of my paths in life is to go towards balance and harmony, and cultivation of beauty. So I'm like, yeah, that feels accurate, So
Mm-mm-mm. So tell us about a time you took a chance for love. And it doesn't necessarily have to be romantic love. Tell us about a time you took a chance for love.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I would. Okay. I'm torn between um, with my husband, but so when COVID hit, and my husband was laid off, and we were just kind of grappling with that in the midst of 3 months in to COVID. The world was scary for all of us, I think. My closest friend growing up since age 2 in California had moved to Cincinnati, Ohio, 20 years prior. And we'd always remained close, and we'd always said, okay, when we retire, we'll live near each other. And so that was kind of always the story. And then when COVID hit, my work as a psychologist went virtual because, again, COVID. And all of a sudden, I was like, we could actually do this. And there were a lot of kind of changes initially with licensing, because as a psychologist, you have to be licensed in the state that you practice. So this is at the very beginning of all of that. But there was a bit more fluidity for a time. And, and I think my heart in it was like this desire and dream that I've always had to live near this dear friend and to like do life together. And I would say like that was a big chance I took on love. And I'm really thankful my husband, there's been a handful of times in my life where I have a clear knowing that doesn't necessarily make sense practically. But it's like yes, you should do this. Yes, you should, and it's, I think 4 or 5 times in my life. And so this was one of them. And it meant leaving an amazing home, her first home I owned in my early 40s, and, leaving family, and, first time I left since college, 20 some years prior. But I really felt like this was an amazing opportunity to do life more with a dear friend, and actually a few dear friends who are out there. So yeah.
But did it work out that way?
I would say I am thankful I did it. I think we can have ideas of what something will be.
Mhm.
And then the lived experience can be quite different. And I think part of it was my, my dear friend, we've had really different life experiences, and we have different needs and bandwidths based on what we were going through in our lives. And also we were in the COVID era, which was brutal. So, I would say I had some disappointments about the experience. I'm sure she did as well. And I also was going through massive, massive grief and stuff with my family and my husband. And, so it was like a, massive dismantling for me in all areas, really, for several years. But what I realized was that like heart forward willingness to do something massive in my 40s catapulted me into so many other things that I've needed to do, like deeper individuation with my family, like my husband and I bonding at a deeper level, going through a really hard time in our marriage that thank God we've come through. But like that, I would say like heart forward willingness allowed for everything else, And then I think there was a clarity of like, it was funny, the eclipse in April. And at that time we lived walking distance from like almost maybe 10 friends from California who had all moved to that area. And it's a lovely area. And we met some dear, dear friends while we were there. But I felt this like, you're not supposed to be here anymore. Like you've learned what you need to learn. It's actually really important to go back and be closer to family and do some healing there. And so it was another big, like, okay, like uprooting. But I had this really strong clarity, and I think that if I hadn't moved when we did, this is a long answer, but I think I would have always had this be a story of like, oh, if I did this, things would be what I desire, like what's perfect or like the best in terms of friendships, And I think I'm glad I learned there were good things, there were hard things. And, we've now landed in the Sierras in Northern California. So it's a few hours from my family, but we can get down there, regularly and with much more ease than flying across country. I feel like I'm in a land that feels really nourishing and like really good for my soul. And I've become really introverted, which I never was, and in a good way. Like I think this next season is actually like more about me learning from spirit and then clarifying how what I meant to give in the world, and less about like doing all the things that are normative in my 40s and 50s, if that makes sense.
I love how you're listening more to your intuition and less in your head, which is really cool.
And
Yeah.
I find it so powerful, like what you're sharing, like what I hear is like the thread. As you're talking, I can see the thread, right? One takes you to the next, to the next, to the next, to next. And you're just willing to say, yes, I'm gonna do that. Okay, yes, I'm gonna do that. Yes. And I totally get the confronting reality in a way. Like that's what I call it. It's like I grew up in Argentina, right? And there's always that, oh yeah, like it was my childhood where there was really like uninhibited and free. And I have this fantasy of what it's like, right? And every so often I'm like, yeah, probably I should go live there to see, to confront reality and see what it's really like, right? Because there's no other way of finding out. So good for you for following that and making that experiment and learning whatever you needed to learn ultimately, right? Because that's all there always is, just
True,
the
true.
learning, just the learning. Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. So who or what do you want to be when you grow up? Like if you could be anything or anyone, if there's no restrictions, there's no limitations, so there's no time, no money, no anything, any
Mhm.
restrictions at all, who
Yeah.
would you be or what would you be and why?
Mm. I feel like I've been on a very curvy path towards this. That's still going to be in motion for a long time. But I've, mm, there has been a kind of origin seed in the work I've done for the last 20 years of witnessing people and helping them heal and transmute and move forward, and really honoring their goodness and their worth and helping them to remember that. So that I would say is the seed that has been throughout my work and as a therapist and a psychologist. But I would say like who I want to be, like if I wasn't worried about bills or like, all the things, I love learning about like spiritual, like the ways that God, spirit source, the goddess shows up in our lives. I love learning that. And I think the more I study different traditions, the more I'm like, no, it's all different fractals of the ways that spirit speaks to us, right? And then I think there's so much more than we see or know in this world. So if I had total freedom, and I would say moving toward this incrementally, is I would keep studying all the things spiritually. I really desire to transition from the psychologist. And I would say in that work, I've woven like the left brain and the right brain. I'm very intuitive. So I don't probably do therapy the way maybe some others do it. But I felt a really strong pull the last few years of like moving into this much more synergistic healing in people's homes. And I also love traveling and being in other cultures. Like one of my favorite places in the world is Morocco. I want to go to Turkey. I want to go to Egypt. I like travel fills my soul. And I think because I see like we're all so similar, and yes, there are differences, but like it's just yeah, I love it. So my dream is to do this healing design work to help people create sanctuary in their home and help them to remember who they are past all the clutter, mental, physical, spiritual, all the stuff. And then to also lead retreats in really spiritually powerful places. So like Morocco, I would love to do that. In Turkey, I've never been. So, that's just a feeling. Peru, I've spent some time studying with wisdom keepers in Peru. So I would love to do that. And I hope as I continue to get older, I hope that the things that are painful in my life, like don't close my heart, but like open it, and that I have a deeper and deeper trust in the faith that God, Goddess, Spirit, Source is carrying me, that it's not on me. So I hope I become the woman who really knows that, that's my desire.
Given that you know it, you will never close your heart because you have that awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting here, I'm like, pick me, I'll go with you, right? And I can see
Yes,
Christina
please.
too. It's like,
Mhm. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I'd say you
That'd be
already
amazing.
are that. It's just stepping into it more and more.
Yeah. No, the last 2 years has been, I think because of everything, my confidence got so shaken. And I had spent, I've had this vision for almost 8 years. And then I've spent 3 years like really working full time plus investing in this new business. And the energy wasn't moving forward. Like Martina, like you said, we were talking about something that you'd created. And I do believe like there's the right time for things, right time for things to birth, but I do feel like part of my dismantling has been like, am I trusting in like my push, or am I trusting in like that spirit is coming through me and I can really trust that what I hear, which I think I in most of the ways do, but like that I can build what I desire to build,
otherwise you wouldn't have the desire.
Yeah. Yeah, it certainly isn't leaving after 8 years. So a sign.
That's That's awesome. So if you had a magic wand and could give people any quality, what would you give them and why?
Mm. You know, I was sitting with that question and I was torn. The two that came to mind, and it's probably one, you know, I think about like how self-referential we are, you know, but I feel like sometimes in places in my life, I see that a lot of pain is caused because people don't have empathy for what other people are going through. And I think that there could be a lot of healing if people had compassion or empathy for what someone else is experiencing. So that's, I would say that's the first one that came to mind. The other that I would say has been an ongoing growth edge for me is like faith, like regardless of what's happening in your life, regardless of the hard stuff, like really having faith that there is a larger being here holding all of us, you know? Because I feel like if we knew that, we wouldn't respond in that like fear way, like that you were talking about the guy who's purchasing the house, you know, like that's such a closed, I'll get mine energetic way, right? So I wonder if like if we all had a lot more faith, if it might keep our hearts open, you know?
We have to learn that, right? It's so not in our current system.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Beautiful. So, last question.
Mm.
What do you want people to remember about you?
Mm. Two parts. So I think one, and I'm not going to remember the quote verbatim, but Maya Angelou has a quote of like, it doesn't matter what you say or what you do. It's how do people feel in your presence? Like, did they feel loved? You know, did they feel seen? And that is my desire. Um, and it's interesting because in some of the hard things the last few years, I feel like love has been more of a challenge for me. And I would say years prior, that wasn't the case. So it's interesting to be like, I want people to feel loved. Okay, where are the places that I'm blocked in me? You know, but I want people to feel seen and loved and valued and safe.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. So, I know you have a business. You have two, right?
Mm.
Do you want to tell us about it? Do you want to tell? And just know that we're going to put everything in the notes for your listeners out there. It's all going to be in the notes. But just tell us about your business. Tell us what you do, how people can find you.
Thank you. I so appreciate that. So I have an ongoing therapy practice, and it's www.dr. Michelle with two L's Spoelstra, and because it's tricky to spell, I would just say in the show notes.com. And that's the therapy I've had for years. And that's I'm licensed in California and Ohio. And then the business that I am building and really my like heart's desire is doing healing design in people's homes. And so there are a few different kind of components of that. So one is someone who has gone through a big loss or a big transition, like we've talked about in this time. And they really recognize that their home is holding the energy of it. And it could be clutter, it could be energetic, it could be stuff that like reminds them of the old season and it doesn't feel right anymore. So this is kind of a deeper dive into let's hear your story, like whether it's virtual like this or I come to wherever you live, and let's really witness your story. Let's listen for where and how is it held in your home. Let's do ceremony around clearing energetically what's happened, or what is just, you know, kind of no longer relevant, right? And let's clear things physically. Like, let's find out how you can give things away, because then you can help someone else and actually you become lighter, right? And then helping people think about what colors are resonant, what stones are resonant, what like scent do they want in their space? Like, how do they have a holistic experience that feels elevating for their spirit and for their body? So I really believe like when we do that in our home, it helps us with whatever we're meant to do in the world, you know? So that's kind of the deeper dive. I would say like a less deep dive is someone who's like, I'm in transition. I want to do some sessions just talking about the transition and what they want to design for their life going forward. So, this is akin to life coaching, but a little different from my training. And it's really looking at like less about the past, like we'll reference the past, but it's really, what do you want to cultivate in your life now? And then the other piece that I desire to build out is the retreat. So I anticipate doing retreats with people who've been through similar experiences. So say women who've gone through infertility or empty nesters, or, things where people have a resonant experience and can talk about, okay, how do I move forward, right? Like, how do I carry my wounds and really nourish myself and be witnessed, and then cultivate something new, right? And then it might also just be people who aren't necessarily similar in the wounding or in the transition, but more like they just realize, I want to do something new. And there is something about travel that like wakes us up, and like gives us possibility. So I would love to take people to different countries and like special places in the States too, to do that and to kind of step out of your life and vision what do you want to create in your life going forward. So. And that one is www.michelle.spoelstra.com. And so you can find me on both. Phone number is the same on both. You can reach me via email or Instagram as well.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I cannot wait for your retreats and what you create. It's just really, really exciting. And, every time Christina and I are like blown away. Sorry. Oops.
We all want to participate in everything you guys do. So yes, retreats, when you're ready, we will be there.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And, thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your heart. Thank you for sharing your love. It's just really, it comes through so loud and clear. It's just beautiful to be with you. And thank you to our listeners. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. If you love this, please leave us a review. Please share it with your friends. Please go check out Michelle's websites. Just please check it out and see the images of the designs she did and all she has to offer. And if you want to find out more about us, in the notes are the Linktree profiles as well, so you can do that. And please always remember that you are extraordinary. You rock. Until next time, have a wonderful day.
Bye for now. Michelle, you want to end this?
Thank you. I appreciate you both so much. Thank you for creating this space and for just giving us a place where we can talk about our stories, and for your openness and vulnerability and love. I really appreciate both of you.